look, you have to evolve. It's natural. It's like evolve or die. Warren Buffett said when he's looking at companies, and if you do this study, how many companies on Wall Street actually make it 10 years or more? There's actually very few. So if you look at some of the largest entities in the world, they always have to be evolving, and they have to take great risks to do it.
Welcome to Locality's Making Bank podcast, where we continue our exploration of South Florida's entrepreneurial landscape with host Keith Costello, co-founder and CEO of Locality Bank. Sit back, relax, and let South Florida visionaries guide you on an entrepreneurial journey from tribulation to triumph, sharing the very stories that have shaped them.
Zach Hoffman, welcome to Locality Bank's Making Bank podcast.
Thanks for having me, Keith.
Absolutely. And we're really excited about having you here. A guy who's only been an entrepreneur. He's never worked for anybody. So that's pretty cool.
Only our clients.
Well, I guess we all work for somebody, right?
Yep.
But he's never had a boss. So right out of college, started his business. So anyway, we're going to dig into all that and hear your story. So usually we start off going back to somebody's childhood and your parents, and because a lot of times that the entrepreneurial, that starts there, right? That kind of from your parents or from somebody, you pick it up. So
for sure.
Tell us about when you grew up and your family.
Yeah, so my family's been generational entrepreneurs.
Okay.
My dad was an entrepreneur. His brothers, basically everybody in the family have been entrepreneurs for as far back as I think you can see in the family tree
Wow.
In a lot of respects. I mean, yeah, and if they were working, they're typically like working within family businesses.
Very cool.
Yeah.
So, and you grew up here in South Florida, right?
I grew up in North Miami Beach area, and now I live out in Parkland.
Interesting. So growing up when you were young, did you have any businesses that you either started or that you worked during high school or anything like that?
I'd always been, since my first investing at my bar mitzvah, put a little money into Microsoft, America Online stock early on.
Damn, you bought Microsoft back then. You're doing pretty well.
Well, at the time I did travel a bit with the funds. So I had some wins early on with that. Then started registering domain names as early as the mid 90s when they were essentially, I think Network Solutions was charging about $190 to $220 a year. Whereas right now you can register a domain name for $8. So,
and how old were you when you started doing that?
That was probably around 15, I'd say.
Really?
Yeah.
So you were that comfortable with the internet and technology?
Yeah, it was, wanted to get a .com and see what it was all about.
That's very cool. And so then, so you went on to college at UCF?
Yeah, I went to University of Central Florida, started in 2000. My birthday's on September 9th. Goal was always to potentially work in the World Trade Centers, get into finance and econ. That's what I studied. 9/11 happens, and it's just you're just like, whoa, So essentially kind of just self-evaluate. My father had a Google Ads account going for his business and some SEO vendors that he's working with. Somebody left at his office. He was like, why don't you go check this out, see if you could do anything for me in regards to that? Because I'd already been marketing some of my own websites, doing some SEO. So I took that over and just started to learn it from there.
So to a lot of people, that's kind of a mysterious business, right? And how it works and everything. So at that early age, how did you end up, I know you said, here, try this out. What'd you do to figure it out?
Well, it's, the knowledge base in the world right now. You can learn basically anything from reading websites, or even Elon Musk says you can learn almost anything from YouTube. So the essential, you can go out there and based on YouTube, podcasts, just reading content out there in the world, and you could hyperspeed your learning from literally 0 to hero in under 30 to 60 days in almost any vertical or space at this point.
It's incredible when you think about it. And I have heard some people, even when they talk about our education system, Naval Ravikant, who I don't know if you've ever listened to his podcast, but that's one of the things that he says is, today you can learn anything that you want on the internet, really. And so that's interesting that you took advantage of that at an early age.
Oh, for sure. I mean, if you look at the applications of what people learn on the internet, even if somebody has a health issue, they become probably just as much of an expert as their doctor, if not more, because they have that particular issue. Doctor might be dealing with 100 things. They're just researching and finding information on one particular item. But it applies to almost anything in the world, right? Like if you have a legal challenge or something, you can dig a rabbit hole and basically start to, prompt and get the search results that you're looking for. Or, with the rise of AI, you can definitely pivot into just extracting knowledge at such a rapid rate and getting, I guess, like some of the best technology and expert thought to give you feedback as to where you should go with your thoughts or what next steps could be.
So you're learning these things basically yourself. You're teaching yourself about the internet, about Google ads, about, how to do basically web marketing, digital marketing.
Yep.
And you're doing this, basically for your father. And so you're achieving some success by just kind of doing it by experimentation.
Correct.
And so as a result of that, then when you graduate, when do you start Exalts, or I guess it was called something else in SEO?
Yeah. So been through like an evolution of the brand and the domain name and just, kind of evolved along the way. Graduated school in 2005. I, hung out with my friends in college. And then essentially when I was ready, I went to a few job interviews, kind of decided that wasn't necessarily the path. And if you weren't going to succeed, quote unquote, just make that, just experience it early on. Right. So, but failure has never really been an option, not ever over the course of 18 years plus. You can imagine you've had some, personally, you've always had some like trials and triumphs. So it's just like, you always keep persisting. Like that's the key to being an entrepreneur and being a successful entrepreneur is persistence and evolution. So the brand name, I started as searchengineoperator.com, like the telephone, because I always figured somebody would need a search engine operator. Then evolved it to SEO.cc. Found that marketing at .cc wasn't as lucrative as marketing at .com because I figured I know people were typing SEOcc.com.
Right.
And then I was in a meeting and a prospect at the time that became a client goes, I need excellent results, expedited results tomorrow. And a light bulb went off in my head and I'm like, all right, I'm going to call it Exalts. Or I went out and did some research, and Exalts means to rejoice as a result of a success. And I went out, acquired exalts.com because it wasn't just freely available. So I went out into the aftermarket and bought it. And the rest, as they say, is currently, it's history in a way, but it's the current for us. But Exalts allows us to pivot and evolve as the markets rapidly change.
And so so you essentially launched your business after college, 2005.
Correct.
So 18 years.
Yep.
You've been in business more or less, or going into your 19th year, really, right?
Yep, exactly.
So that's amazing.
Thanks.
And so as you go along and you're starting this business, what are some of the early things that you learned that might be helpful to some other people who are doing this?
So in starting a business in general?
In the early on, what are some of the real challenges that you were able to overcome that you faced?
Definitely having a network, relationship capital, friends to call on, or people that end up in different professional business sectors. You never know how they could, essentially assist you in getting your feet on the ground and, evolving the business forward or even becoming your first clients.
How did you build that personal network?
Some of it even started in college, in school, and evolved from there. And then also just networking, going to events and building up your network through there as well.
Did you join any organizations in particular that might have helped?
Early on, I worked with a PR agency when I could, take that leap. Also working with different law firms. Law firms have networks of clients and the associates have relationships with clients that they can introduce you to. Having an accountant, they have clients, they can introduce you to people. So, also asking for referrals and just, building a network that way as well. And we practice what we preach. So doing our own ads via Google, now it's Facebook, Instagram, but at the time it was strictly Google Ads as well as doing some search engine optimization.
And that's basically how you started to build your customer base.
Yeah, as well as some message boards early on in the day, some email message networks, and just forums as well. And people still build businesses that way. There's a lot of social networks and the impact that you can have. It's definitely real. Creating content, getting out there. It's similar to a website. It's a salesperson that's essentially open 24/7 and is always out there, making waves for you.
I even remember early on some physical signs on your building right on Federal Highway.
Correct.
Right. I can remember that. I mean, it was prominently displayed, that your business was there and, the success that you were having. So that was very cool.
For sure. We had a location over on US 1, and then we had some billboards on 95, some of the inroads, 595 as well. All media, all noise for business is good in a way. It definitely gets your name out there. You never know who's seeing it, and you never know, where their mindset is at the time. I'd say not all buyers are really ready. Like they're only ready at like 0.5%, 1% of the time. So like if you hit them at that particular instance or can kind of like persuade their thought that they need to purchase the product or service, it goes a long way, just being present. That's why you see some of the largest organizations in the world. A lot of companies get comfortable, I'd say. And then you look at companies like Google, Chase, just the largest entities in the world, they still market and advertise, right? Like every single year they have a marketing budget. You just have to be out there. And that's how momentum catches on. And even in downturns is probably that's the most important time to be marketing, because in an uptick and when things are flowing, it's flowing for a lot of people. It's the people that persist and push through. Like when you see like a downward trajectory, those are the most important times to build market share, because essentially most of the market retracts and market leaders are built through those different eras.
I know we certainly know that in our business, right? Mm-hmm. There's always an opportunity when there's disruption in the banking industry, and we try to take advantage of that and be on the offense during those times. So that's a good point. And then also you said something I think which is really interesting, and I want to just emphasize it, which is that not all buyers are ready to buy, right? So it's like 0.5 to 1%. You said, which is probably accurate, that, particularly, and we're not talking about buying, dinner, right? We're talking about making a business purchase, a service for their business, as a pretty, sizable purchase, right? And not everybody's ready to do that all the time. And so I think by just having your name out there, I think that's a great message, just constantly being, reinforcing that what you do and we're here and building those kind of relationships through all those different media. It's a great idea.
For sure. Even if you look at the impact of just going back to social media, it's essentially, there are going to be a lot of people. We're right here in February, so Super Bowl is upon us, right? And there's going to be a lot of organizations spending a lot of time for a 30-second or 60-second spot. The reality is people are going to be looking at their Facebook, their Instagram, their Twitter X, wherever they are. They're going to be TikTok. They're going to be looking at their phones during the Super Bowl, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, who capitalizes on bringing somebody from that traditional footprint, that traditional media, capitalizes on that 30 seconds and then can pull them into a full engagement with, the organization for minutes at a time, whether it's through a website, an app they've created, or some type of virtual experience. We've also been producing a lot of content for ourselves on social media to get it out there persistently. And we've seen a lot of returns on that, because there's people watching all types of networks and mediums. I went to an event the other night in downtown Fort Lauderdale, right? And because I moved out to Parkland, I don't necessarily get downtown as often, but everybody in the room, like depending on like their age demographic, they'd be like, I saw you on LinkedIn. I've been seeing your content on Facebook. I've been seeing it on Instagram. So it was interesting to hear like different people are looking at different mediums, but they're all essentially kind of seeing the content. And it has no borders, I would say, either. Like it's not like buying traditional advertising where you hope they're driving by or you hope they're watching TV at that instance. Yeah, it's basically almost a guarantee that a lot of people are going through their feeds right about now.
So the content part, and obviously that's why we do this podcast, right? We're putting content out because we want to help local companies, entrepreneurs, get ideas about how to, basically launch or improve or scale their businesses.
Sure.
How has your business evolved from, the original like SEO, right? Which was ads and search engine optimization. How has it evolved now? And what do you think content is a better way to go now? Or
well, they always say content is king, right? Whether the content was essentially people writing types of like just words or producing videos or taking unique photos that aren't stock images. So content essentially has always been king. It's king for media companies. So yeah, content in general, I believe is king for pushing out there. And then or the question, I guess.
Well, and so from putting enough content out on your site and on your website, and that tends to draw better search results, right?
Yeah, definitely tends to draw better search results, but it just there's humans on the other side too, so it tends to draw eyes, impressions, and gets people into your thought, into their thoughts. Even on like LinkedIn, you could see who might have viewed or like engaged with a specific post, and then you can follow up with them. So there's a lot of ways to just build traction that way.
Very, very interesting the way we've seen that all evolve. So in your 18, almost 19 years of running a business, tell us about what's been kind of the biggest obstacle that you've had to overcome so far.
You always you think there's something that's going to be bad, but like it's not. Like you think there's something that's going to like throw off the trajectory, but it makes you stronger. If that makes sense, like you lose your quote unquote best client at the time, but then you replace them with 5 or 10. It's like you basically all your energy that can like when you're focused on specific things that can get consumed by like certain like when you start putting your resources into specific like opportunities, if that makes sense, and it just drops out for whatever reason. They're just, if you persist, it naturally you become stronger from it and your resources reallocate, and you'd be surprised like how it like exponentially grows from there. I've had that happen, I would say at least like 4 or 5 times notably throughout the journey, where you're just like, wow, like what's going to happen now? And it's just like, all of a sudden, phone rings, all of a sudden, these 10 more opportunities come out. So it's just like, it's a multiplier effect, if that makes sense. It really has to do with like where your energy, where your focus is going at any given time.
So that key persistence, really. So something happens, it seems like, oh my God, how are we going to get through this?
Correct.
And just persisting, pushing forward, facing whatever it is, you've gotten through it. Is that?
Yeah, for sure. It's like
not that easy, but
I guess it's like watching an athlete that gets to a championship game and they don't win necessarily or something. It's like you're there, you're for whatever reason, you have like some level of comfort, you're like persisting, and then something drops out. You're like, man, like what do I do now? You just keep going and everything seems to work out. But like I said, it's I've seen it a few times throughout, my career, or even just like when you watch like the macro economy or you see like what's going on. The reality is there's more of like a me economy. It's like, what could, I be doing, or like, how could I better myself versus paying attention to like everything else that's going on out there, because somebody else's troubles or your tribulations might not necessarily really impact yours at all. And there's never, people always like, oh, what part do you want to see? What do you want to see? Like, there's never really anything like politically or anything from like the federal level that's ever really kind of like impacted what we do necessarily, if that makes sense. So it really comes back down to like when you're looking at your own game, how can you get like 10, 20, 30% better at what you're doing? Because if you're focused on what else is going on out there, you just never know what's going on out there. You don't know if somebody sold 20, 30%, 50, you don't even know if they own their company nonetheless. And they're spending all these resources to try to like be the best. And then all of a sudden they're gone in, 18 months. You see people like that come and go in different markets. So I'd just say really like persistence and really, having a guide and looking at like what you're doing as yourself, evaluating your own organization and what you could do to make that much more efficient or better is much more important in my eyes than necessarily saying like, hey, what's going on in this outer world, or what's the Federal Reserve saying about what's going to happen in the economy, or, there's a lot of noise out there. So you gotta, you can only have one thought at a time usually. So.
And have you had a mentor or mentors that you've gone to for guidance at times when you've been
mentors
distressed?
Mentors are great. You just pick their brain, when they give you the time or they, give you a half hour, an hour. Some of the mentors have been clients. Some of the mentors have been just, people that, come along the way. I've had a number of mentors through my journey. I still do. And you're always kind of seeking them out. I would say you have to be seeking out mentors or people that are maybe in the same industry, but other, locations. Everybody's at a different point in the journey, and mentors are very important.
Have you been in any groups like EO or Vistage or any of those types of things, or YPO?
Not necessarily at this stage.
Okay.
I've had a lot of great mentors. Steve Sadek at Stephen Douglas Associates, Michael Gusky, who started Orphan, who sold it to Warren Buffett, Berkshire Hathaway. There's a guy, Mark Evans. He's the deal maker. He's in real estate and has, a lot of entrepreneurial spirit. Been taking, a lot of advice from there. I have a sales mentor, Ali Mirza, that we had talked about before. So there's just, a lot of people throughout the journey. Some of my friends that had gone from corporate to entrepreneurs. One of my buddies, Wes Cowan, who's like doing a lot in the blockchain right now, but he went, a few different areas in the journey. My father, seeing everything from the business growing up.
Yeah.
So, look, I've always looked up to Wayne Huizinga, who's like, he was Fort Lauderdale, and all his impact and the way that they had those recurring revenue models and everything that they built up, whether it was AutoNation, Blockbuster, just even if you're watching from the sidelines, you don't necessarily need to like have a one-on-one conversation with you to mentor you. You can study up and learn a lot from, what you see happening.
Right.
Through the news.
That's great. So. That's very, very good advice. So I wanted to get into AI a little bit, because I know, we were talking about that before we started, and you're delving into that. And what are some of the things you could share about what you're doing with AI right now?
Yeah. So, there's a lot of misconceptions about AI, but some of the things that we're doing is we're building guardrails and tools for professionals to utilize it more efficiently in their businesses. Because there's going to be a lot of regulation that comes out around it. And there's also, it's not for everyone without necessarily having like a template away. It's like, if you look at how somebody might do a Google search, there's, probably not everybody's doing a Google search the same way, correct? Mm-hmm. So when you look at how they're utilizing AI, you have to put prompts in to get your responses. If you leave people to do their own journey and get, just input their own prompts, I assure you're going to get multiple different answers, and you're not going to be able to really like efficiently capitalize on it. There's no way to manufacture efficiency off everybody doing something their own way, if that makes sense. Definitely creating tools for organizations to more efficiently utilize AI.
And so you're making this part of your business and part of what you're doing with your clients by offering these AI tools.
For sure.
And that you're finding the acceptance of that pretty strong?
It's interesting. I just did my first trade show, marketing it aggressively. As of January, we started, we're rolling out service and product focused in the legal industry. And we can do consulting on the AI realm. But as well, when we go out to trade shows, and I always encourage people to go to trade shows, you learn so much about what the market demand is. You also learn about what the pitfalls might be to actually converting a sale. So you go back to the lab and you go and you address all these concerns, or you address all these issues so you can go back and close your deals. But it's interesting to hear just some feedback on the market, like people that I would say are encouraged by it, people that are the risk takers that are going to be the market leaders that actually embrace it. And then you hear a lot of people that give every reason to want to potentially push it back or say, but it's not as accurate as this way of doing it. Yeah. But, there's human error too.
So what about financing? And did you have to raise money for your company, or are you self-financed? And, what about banks and this type of thing?
So banks have been, great partners for us. And, you guys at Locality have been a great partner, but definitely I've bootstrapped the organization company. So I've never taken an outside dollar. So essentially have, bootstrapped to where we are today.
So you own it 100% and you've just used banks for financing as needed.
Correct.
That's great. Good for you. So what about the future? What do you see as the future of your business? You've been in business for 18 years. That's a long time.
Yeah.
And congratulations. A lot of businesses don't make it 18 years.
Well, thanks.
And so, what's the future look like for you, Zach?
Well, definitely AI is going to be a big part of it, and evolution. You don't know what's around the corner. There's always something in the market to at least like acknowledge or see, is there a path or is there an opportunity there? Because I've taken opportunities and gone down paths which haven't been led to fruition. So the jury's not out yet on AI. So that is, essentially, look, you have to evolve. It's natural. It's like evolve or die. Warren Buffett said when he's looking at companies, and if you do this study, how many companies on Wall Street actually make it 10 years or more? There's actually very few. So if you look at some of the largest entities in the world, they always have to be evolving. And they have to take great risks to do it. That's why there's research and development budgets.
Yeah. I mean, I know like Amazon, Jeff Bezos has that first day mentality, right? Like every day has got to be like our first day in business. We have to maintain that energy and that vitality and that kind of energy that you have. Like when you first start out, it's very easy to get lazy and kind of, bureaucratic as businesses get bigger. So,
sure.
So that's something we all need to. Of course, we're small and new, so we still are at that startup stage. But 18 years, and you're still maintaining that.
What
that kind of energy and startup mentality.
You have to, right? Like in order to keep growing, because we've always been on a growth trajectory. You have to be, looking at what's new, or if this happens, if X happens, what's Y? Like where do you go? Or just, you always have to have, I think that's why guys like me like fast cars. I don't know. You got to always kind of be paying attention to what's in front of you and be ready to accelerate.
Cool. So, and I know you have a lovely family, 2 kids, and you guys live in Parkland. And anything else like on the philanthropy side or charitable organizations you've been involved with at all?
I've been involved with a number of charitable organizations along the way, the Broward Center, JFS, United Way, across the way. It goes back to networking, being able to meet people, also making a positive impact on the community, because you never know who you're helping. There's always somebody that needs a helping hand. So nonprofits are very important, and their impact is is critical to community, society. And I think every great out there has a story as to how something like a nonprofit gave them that opportunity. So.
Yeah. Well, that's great. So any last advice or anything that you want to offer to somebody who might be listening out there, wondering how to start a business or how to scale their business?
Definitely. I mean, I make myself available if anybody wants to reach out to me on LinkedIn.
That's great.
But advice, just try. There's no shame in trying, right? It's you can always strike out and get back up to bat. So you just got to be persistent. Yeah,
that's the message, right? Persist. You've said that a few times, and that has helped you, and you've continued to be persistent. So now we're going to shift to the lightning round.
All right.
Where we hit you with a lot of quick questions just to round out the end of our podcast. Do you have a favorite book?
Favorite book? 0 to 1.
Oh yeah,
it's a very good book. It's
good one. Is there a song that's like your theme song, maybe from your youth or from teenage years, or?
Not necessarily. It's a hard one to win, but definitely I like my Green Day.
Okay, so anything from Green Day, we'll take that. So AI, we already talked about that. You're optimistic, obviously. You think there's huge potential there, right?
For sure.
Got it. How about favorite restaurant?
Favorite restaurant?
Locally.
I used to love Valentino's on US 1. I understand he's reopening.
Yeah, it's reopening, yeah.
Yeah, so that should be awesome.
Cool. Yeah. What's something that you're grateful for today?
My family and support.
Oh, that's great. That's good to hear.
2 kids, my wife. So,
what's a new skill that you're learning?
AI.
Cool. Yeah, I guess you really already answered that.
I mean, it's something that it's already been baked into what I've done for over a decade. To program the search engines and to do all these algorithmic things, you already have an idea of the algorithms that they're utilizing to plan and sculpt those next steps. So it's not necessarily that learning, but evolving how I think and evolving how I position thinking to understand where it's going.
Yeah. What are your hobbies? What do you like to do when you're not working?
Well, I enjoy going to Marlins baseball, and I also coach my son's baseball team.
Oh, great.
It's fun.
Oh, that's cool. That's great. How about what's a fear that you've overcome?
Fear that I've overcome? Hard for me to acknowledge a fear. It's you just don't. I mean, I think it's important to talk to people. If you have ever have down thoughts, or if you ever have you can always be coached through something. I think so. I think there's a lot of stigma that people have to talk to somebody, and I think it's important to talk to somebody. So, that helps you overcome any fears, because a lot of things just kind of happen in the moment, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And when you talked about going through your business career and having those moments, you work through them.
Exactly.
Without becoming paralyzed by fear, I guess. So, how can people get in touch with you? You mentioned LinkedIn.
Yeah.
Is that the best way?
That's a good way.
Yeah.
That's
and you also have a podcast too, right?
I do. Yeah, we have an Exalts Marketing podcast, and also just putting out a lot of content, just giving advice, tips for businesses, as well as, running your business via Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, X, Twitter, TikTok, just posting and syndicating information out there.
So people who need some advice on, marketing, particularly law firms you're working with, right? Now, but it's really any company.
It's a portion of our book, but now, when we're looking at the AI challenges and the areas to scale AI effectively, and you look at where some professions might be buried in paper, you look at how to evolve that really quickly. But definitely we work with a wide variety of clients. Great. So anybody looking to generate leads or new business, we can definitely assist and grow their business.
Excellent. Well, Zach, thanks a lot. You've been a great guest.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming by.
Appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Thanks for tuning in to Locality's Making Bank podcast. Be sure to subscribe on your favorite podcast platform to catch the latest episodes, and visit localitybank.com today to learn more about all the benefits of banking local.